All right, Boker Tov, good morning. We left off last week and the tensions were high. The tensions were high, and rightfully so. That was the whole point of last week. How could it be that way? It was that way because we're dealing with very sensitive information. What is interesting to me is that many of you have never even heard of these things before. Many of you have never been introduced to the fact that there was or is an opinion in Jewish thought that Torah study, especially the intellectual side of Torah study, is, so to speak, dangerous for women. Yeah, you're about to...
Oh, you know what?
Okay.
Press the button. Well, it was interesting. I've been reading about this kind of like a biography of Maimonides. So in the 12th century, one of the things they said about him was in all his letters and all his writings, there's almost zero mention of any women or Maimonides. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh.
You know, because he did have one son later on in life, and yet no mention of
He never had daughters?
no mention of it. And he had only one son. And what people back then apparently, this is what I read, and see if you know something different. Instead of saying, how's your wife? What they would say is, how's the health of your home? Because the wife's job was to have everything running efficiently and well, so that the man could go out and do whatever it is he was doing.
Hillel used to call his wife, my home, Beiti.
Yeah.
Because the term of endearment in Hebrew or Aramaic for a wife in the olden days was Biti, my daughter. Like you would refer to your good friend as Bni, my son. As opposed to the word wife and husband are not such old words in Jewish literature. And so Hillel used to say, don't call her Biti, my daughter, because she's not your daughter. Call her Beiti, the one who is my home, meaning the entirety of my house.
It spells the same though.
Right.
Betty.
What you want, you could add a yud
No,
to.
there is a yud.
No, but she's right. You could spell it
You
if
could
you wanted
spell
to
it
the same
both
way.
ways.
But it sounds very different, my home, than my house. It's like, it's where I'm rooted, it's where my comfort is where
Exactly.
Well, the
my
Chazal
nourishment
go on to
comes
explain
from.
that the woman of the home is what sets the tone for the home. Essentially, and you're talking about a world where a husband was not really at home, and the children, everyone who was in the home, servants, or whoever you would have had, are all the tone that they live, the life that they live. If they're holy people, they're good people, was set by the wife, not by the husband. Which is perhaps why some of the tefillot from the olden days say, a person should save me from the evil eye, from the evil thing, from the evil this, and from an evil wife. Because he would have no control over what happened in his home if his wife was an evil person. He's just home for a few hours every day. That understanding, I think what we're doing right now is important. And I did this with Ariella and Marlene last week, and I don't know that you'll appreciate it, but I'm going to do it with you anyways. You don't know, or maybe some of you do, but you don't know that you are an exception to a rule. You are an exception to a rule, and you could get mad at me for saying it. It doesn't make you right. If I were to bring now to San Diego, I would rent out, what's the big stadium downtown?
Qualcomm.
Qualcomm it's called? Petco
Petco
Park?
is the best.
Park.
How many seats are in Petco Park? About?
10,000.
10,000.
51,000. Okay.
Wow.
If I would do right now a 3-day challah baking, meditation, face painting, Kabbalistic,
Face painting?
yeah, we'll make face painting Kabbalistic event, 3 days, mega event at Petco Park, we would probably sell out stadium seats. It was just for women. It's a women's only event by Rebbitzins, for Rebbitzins. This event would sell out. People would come from LA. You'd have ladies flying in from Phoenix, from I don't know, from Sacramento, San Francisco.
How much per ticket might be an idea for you if you think you
A good idea, right?
You know?
If I would do this, if I would bring the top 10 Rosh Yeshiva to give a Talmud series, the most difficult, intricate passages of the Talmud for a woman, for 3 days.
Oh wait, somebody would come.
How many women would be at that stadium? Jewish women we're talking about.
Not that many.
Nothing.
Not that. I'll give you my opinion why. First of all, every sect is different, and every sect has their own ideas of what their Rosh Hashanah should be. And they wouldn't want to come and listen to somebody who they don't believe in.
What if I brought 10 different Rosh Hashivas that represent 10 rabbis across the spectrum? I'm talking about the topic, not the rabbis. Let's talk about the topic.
Cover all your bases, and when they know that their rabbi will be there.
I'm going to tell you, it's the marketing.
You're right, Janet.
If what?
The marketing.
It's all marketing.
Tell me.
I'm not sure. I think it's because there's no tradition for women to do this kind of stuff.
That's part of it, I agree.
It's not tradition for women to what?
There
To do
are
this kind of
definitely
stuff.
women who are interested, but it's going to be a small group.
Yeah.
We're more social, we're not so...
I can tell you that at the Chabad
Say, you could say it, Julie. I'm not going to be the one to say it. More social, but
Not
Not
like
intellectual.
halachic.
okay. So let me pause you for a moment before we say anything wrong. Okay. As a rabbi, I might be young, but I've taught for a number of years now. I know almost always that if I give a certain class, what the male-female ratio is going to be. Almost always. If I err on the side of an academic, intellectual topic, outside of this group, none of my other people will show up. Men, yes. And even then, it's only when their wives force them out of the house. Men are lazy in general, so coming to classes is it's a whole thing they don't really do. If you see how many classes you go to a week and how many classes your husband or significant other goes to during the week, you will be blown away. There's no comparison. And it's not because they don't have time. It's something with men. It's like why you don't ask for directions, because it's hard to learn from someone else. It's a big deal. Men have this block, in the DNA. When we're talking about women studying Talmud, you have to imagine that Rabbi Eliezer, who we're being very angry at, if this is the attitude today, and I didn't say it, Ariella and Marlene were a little surprised in the last day. Like, what do you mean? Is that true? The truth is that if today, in a generation where most women in the world have for sure a high school degree, and especially college education, and they're even career women, meaning they have their own life that's intelligent and intellectual, and still in this generation, I'd be hard-pressed to fill up a classroom on topics such as Talmud or the deeper understandings of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. You have to imagine what it looked like 2,000 years ago, where your average woman didn't know how to read. You could tell me right or wrong. That's what it was.
That's right.
Men barely knew how to read. So woman was in a society where men were always above women. If a man didn't know how to read, of course his wife wouldn't know how to read. It's the same reason why our rabbis tell us that, when you lead the Birkat HaMazon, technically a lady can read the Birkat HaMazon out loud. For the people who don't, it used to be in the olden days, one person read the Birkat HaMazon out loud for everybody who doesn't know how to read. We still do this in my house. And so, can the wife lead the Birkat HaMazon if the man doesn't know how to read? And a rabbi said, cursed is the man whose wife knows how to read and he doesn't know how to read. Not necessarily because it's a bad thing that his wife knows how to read, but in a society where if a woman can do something, a man must obviously be able to do such a thing.
And it wasn't just the Jewish community. It was in general. It was human beings.
Absolutely.
And that's why that's what I wanted to say before. I wonder whether it's really intrinsic in Torah or whether it's just a societal thing, because everybody was doing this.
Tamar's asking a good question.
I think that's a good
So
point.
when these rabbis are saying what they're saying, and I know Ariella last week you were a little upset, like, who are the rabbis to come to me and put the word of God? Maybe they weren't dealing with a godly matter. Perhaps they were dealing with just a practical situation. The situation in which we live are that most women are illiterate. And if I believe that intellectuality is a double-edged sword, it can lead you to a very high place. It can also, you could use it for all kinds of bad things. Knowledge is power, they say.
It's true.
Right? So then maybe I should not teach. No, how many times have people in this class told me, Rabbi, that was a great topic, but why are you informing people that you didn't know about these politics beforehand? Why are you telling them about it now?
I think it's important to know about everything.
It is. But sometimes knowledge in a wrong person's hand is very dangerous.
That's correct.
I don't believe I should censor it. I'm not for censoring.
No.
But I understand, I can at least appreciate slightly trying to keep certain things away from certain kinds of people.
Yes.
Well, we live in a time period that really can't be compared to anything in the past.
That's
It's
right.
so unique and different. In almost any city in the Western world, really, and you can find 3 and 4 colleges or universities, to choose from in almost any city where you are. That didn't exist.
Unprecedented education.
Unprecedented education.
And not just this, the
Unprecedented.
access to knowledge.
I disagree because today I came to be aware by a kid who is in 4th grade that goes to Jewish school that women are not allowed to learn. We spoke about Nevi'im, Mishnah, and Gemara. Women can only learn Chumash.
I'm not
Who
talking
said
about
that?
just
Can I-
the
can I have
Jewish
a tissue?
community.
That's
I'm
exactly
not-
their city.
In
Where is
their
this,
city.
Ariella?
In their city. It's-
Marilyn, can I ask you
I
for a
believe
tissue
in-
from up there? For
I believe it's Lakewood. The point is, if you teach, the point is, okay.
That's something
And I
Didn't-
asked,
didn't-
I asked
I thought I
why.
told you that last week.
Right, but this is continuing. Okay,
Okay.
so it's not by.
So now you met
It's
someone.
not just by those sources here. It's actually by its
Right.
present time, 4th grader. Okay, and I asked why, and it's because the answer was because a woman is tameh. And I said, well, what does that mean? But this is how they are being taught, okay? Because we mentioned that actually, that the grandmother is also learning, and they said he goes like that, and I said, well, what does it mean? And he went, and the neshama is just very dirty. So I said, well, can they go to the
neshama?
mikveh? Can they go to
Is
the
that
mikveh
Taliban
to clean
school?
it up?
Where do they study?
Huh?
The Taliban or
There's always
ISIS? Who's
gonna
running
be
this
some
school?
sect. There's
This is I believe it's
Ariella, there's always going to be some
believe it's
sect,
like-
some group of people, even in the Jewish world, where they
This
are
is
like
not
so
that
off the
though.
wall.
Paulette, Rabbi is giving us from 100 years ago, 50 years ago.
Oh.
This is present time.
You
So
said
I
you know,
understand,
they
but it's
said-
not the majority of the Jewish world from present time. It's one off. It's a one
You're right.
off.
No, these guys are definitely off.
They're
But
off.
she's saying they exist. This is bothering her
Of
that they
course.
exist.
You know,
So
cults
again,
exist
this is
everywhere.
a child
That's
who
right.
has not been seasoned yet in life to realize that he's talking Mishigas.
Why is
And now
that?
But Julie,
How can you?
But he's being taught by adults.
Why would he think he's talking Meshugas
But
if he's learning that in school? This
But
is
maybe
part of
there
his
Or adults who
development.
teaching him this.
Absolutely.
but
Ariella,
maybe
can I ask you to get me a book from the
parents
shelf?
aren't aware that this is what they're learning.
On the top right shelf,
I have to think that those parents are uninformed.
there's going to be a thin red book, and it says Sukkah. No, top right, all the way. All the over there. One of those Gemarot says Sukkah, Masechet Sukkah.
Is this so we can try and do something? Because this is absolutely
Sukkah, you see?
Look, there's always going to be an extremist
You might have to take out the Tanakh or something.
rabbi or group that has 50 families attached to them, but that's not representative of
But
the
I'm for
overall
sure this one is
community in
I
the
know.
world.
Sorry.
And there's just a lot of
What
different.
group is it?
They're radicals. They're radicals.
The Orthodox Jews are in Lakewood, New Jersey.
Oh.
They are. And
Yeah, but-
in New York, upstate.
Yeah,
So
some
down
of them,
the-
but not all of them.
No.
Not all of them.
I used to go to Lakewood as a
But then you've
kid.
got the Spartan and the
I used to go to
Ashkenaz.
Lakewood all the
Spartan
time.
are-
Laurel in the Pines.
Go there,
I have
yes.
pictures in
Big
my
girl.
bathroom. Laurel in the Pines.
I want to read to you a piece of Talmud.
Woodsy Lakes.
That's very cool.
And
You,
didn't
you
that
said
flip
the
you out?
parents flipped? I mean, it's like appreciate you speaking to me and being honest with me. Beautiful.
Yeah, they were bursting.
Powerful. I mean, like you said. Huh?
They were proud, so proud.
Oh, he's
What was
yeah.
your I mean, how did you react to this child? Child.
child?
How old was this person?
4th grader.
A 4th grader.
Yeah, he's a
So
9 years
it's 9
old.
years old, 8, 9 years old.
9 years old. Yeah.
Very impressionable age.
Yes, it is.
I know,
The
he's
adults,
still-
you
he's
have
still
to
education.
Okay, I want to read to you a piece of Talmud. The Talmud says the following.
They don't, Julie.
It's the last
Pay
piece.
them to go to
The last piece of Talmud that I studied in 11th grade. The Talmud says, in the Beit HaMikdash, you had Kohanim,
That's
the
you,
different
Abba.
families of the Kohens. And they would take turns. Like every week, they would switch. This family would take over. So the Kohen family was in charge of the temple this week, and then they would go on vacation for the other 51 weeks of the year. They weren't on active duty. And there was another family that switched up, and they were on active duty. That way, you would never have a situation where the Kohanim were working too hard, or that one of them was in total control of the temple. They kept switching up. So they would separate it into the amount of weeks there are in a year. And so there was a family. Now this is under the Roman occupation. So you have to know that we had a Beit Mikdash and the Romans were already around. Tanura Banana, Rabbi tells Maaseh b'Miriam bat Bilga. There was a Miriam. She was the daughter of Bilga. Her family was the Bilga Kohen family. Okay, that's what Rashi tells us. Shehimira data. What does himira data mean? Someone help me out. See? Yeah, what she did was she ended up leaving Judaism. Himira data means she replaced her religion. She ended up becoming a Roman. Not Roman, we're talking about the Greeks here, Mechila. She went and married one of the Greek princes. To Greeks, not Romans. When the Greeks had entered the Holy of Holies, the Beit HaMikdash, she kicked the altar with her sandals, with her shoes. And she said, Locus, locus, you wolf, you wolf. How long are you going to keep stealing the Jewish people's money in their sacrifices? And you're not going to protect them when the Greeks come? She was mocking the Jewish people and especially the altar. And you're talking about a daughter of a Kohen, so she was actively involved in the Beit Mikdash.
She had been.
Had been, very, very nice. So what happened?
She got very angry.
She was
going up the derech.
This would be someone, let's say, who chose not to be Jewish anymore. And then it's a difference between that and taking a Torah scroll and throwing it down the street. You know, when she was essentially performing a very provocative act. She was angry. When our sages heard this, kavu et ta'bata v'satmu et chalonam v'yesh omrim b'shmarto shoha lavo v'nichnas. Okay. So essentially what happened was they punished the entire Bilga family that they were not allowed to serve anymore in the Beit HaMikdash. I'm going to skip a few lines.
So
It says the Gemara,
punished because of her.
says the Gemara, Mishum Barte Kansina Leile Dideh, because of someone's daughter, you're going to punish the whole family? Amar Abaye, says Abaye, yes. Kidam Re'im Shei, it's like the folk saying, Shuta Dienuka B'shuka, this is Aramaic. If you hear a child speaking in the street, in the marketplace, shuka is a shuk. Od de'avuha, either it's her father said that once at home, or de'ime, or her mother said it once at home. Okay, so because of her father and mother, you're going to punish the rest of the family, the aunts, the uncles, all of them are going to go down for it also? Says, Amar Abaye says, Oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno. Says, woe to the evil person, and woe to the one who chooses to be the neighbor of the evil person. Tov l'tzadik, tov l'shcheno. Someone who's a righteous person, it's good to be his next door neighbor. Meaning, you can be guilty by association. This was clearly a family, we see from the story, that was educating their children on a certain hatred of values. And so the Torah says, the rabbi said, obviously today she's married and she has her own life or whatever she's doing, but here you have a big problem. You have a problem.
Nothing happened to her?
She's already married to some Greek guy.
No, but nothing happened. And they didn't write about what happened to her.
There's an argument here whether they just punished her or it was her family also. I'm going on the opinion that says it was her family. You see from here that there's a certain element of you only speak a certain way when at home you were taught a certain way. It doesn't last forever, not your whole life. Not everything is a person's parents' fault. But, I was once at a brit. I was at a brit with a friend of mine who was a Bukharian Jew. Happens to be a very dark person, skin color. And we're at this event, and a little Jewish girl walks over to him and says, "Oh, are you a Schwarzer?" Like that, in those words. I'm sorry to say such words in public, I'm repeating what happened. Schwarzer is a derogatory term that Eastern European Jews use towards black people. And
They used to tell Sephardi people.
okay, we're proud of being Schwarzer. So,
My mother used to say that.
Schwarz means black, but the term Schwarzer towards a person, yes.
Me too.
So
In Europe, they all said the same thing.
So when I heard this, he wanted to get mad at her. I said, it's not her fault. What is she, 8 years old? She must have heard, if she's using this word, it must be that in her home they use such words. In my home, if I would say something like that, I would. I don't know what would happen to me. But yeah, probably. But there are clearly places in the world where the upbringing is a. You see this the other way too. You see children that are so sweet and good and kind and helpful. You say he's only 5 years old. Where did he get that from? It's his parents. Parents have an influence on people as well. It doesn't. It's not a. It's not infallible. It doesn't mean that everything a child does is the parents' fault. But clearly, in this situation, the Bilga family was known to be a problematic family, and she was the result. She was the product of such a family. Why am I sharing this with you? You mentioned back to this kid. You're right. This is a 4th grader, and you can't really take a 4th grader's word for Torah Moshe Misinai. It's not Moses speaking, but if a 4th grader is repeating something innocently, they're hearing it in a fashion that makes it sound acceptable to talk that way. Meaning, a 4th grader doesn't yet have that thing in their head where, are you going? You leaving? Okay, bye. Yeah. So he doesn't have in their head, or she doesn't have in their head that let's hide this from other people. Let's not say it this way. Let's sugarcoat it. It's not that women are impure. It's just that we think women are holy, or whatever it would be that they would teach them in the later grade.
No, it's to me.
Okay, so it's unfortunate there are still such people.
Absolutely.
Okay, but I want, if you let me, let's go back into these sources. There's another side of this coin we didn't explore yet, and I think it's important. Remember, this whole discussion is leading up to can a lady be a rabbi?
Correct.
So if we're saying that you can't even study Torah, so obviously you already ruled it out. So if someone's telling you,
I'm a community.
if you're from that camp, then obviously there's nothing to talk about. You understand? Okay. We went through the different rebbitzins that were teaching behind the curtain, right? Remember those? That's what we did at the end of last week's class. Let's see the bottom of page 2, the bottom right.
Oh, not left, okay.
The Rambam has to make a crucial decision. He said that someone who teaches his daughter Torah is like teaching her a waste of time at best, or promiscuity at worst. He uses the word that's very vague, remember? The question is, if a lady does choose to go ahead and study Torah, not is she allowed to, but is it a good thing that she's doing?
Yes.
Does she receive any kind of reward for it?
No.
No reward, but it's good for her intellect and her knowledge.
That's this question. It's a good question that we're asking.
Learning Torah, you get reward.
Yeah, a man does because he's obligated in it. But what about a woman?
Intellect and knowledge.
Does she get a reward? I mean, does she get any kind of mitzvah?
Yeah.
Mitzvah of learning Torah?
I think she does.
Maybe she's not allowed to though.
Well, we find it in the Torah. It doesn't say that the woman's not supposed to. This task is actually Torah should be taught to everyone. So if a man can learn Torah and he gets mitzvah,
But you're going on an assumption that we're not up to yet.
Could you say again, what did the Rambam say?
The Rambam, remember, he was quoting the Talmud. The Talmud says, "Kol hamelamed bito Torah." Anyone who teaches his daughter Torah, ki'ilu melamdat tiflut. It's as if he's teaching her tiflut. And we said
What's
tiflut. Last week we spent a significant amount of time. Either it's promiscuity. We said that she'll sharpen her mind to know how to get out of the whole Sota story. Or it at best was a waste of time. Like I told you last week that I don't think men should study Talmud because it's a waste of time for them as well.
It's really just being able to use the law in her advantage.
In her advantage.
So, but you can't take away, with all respect to the Rambam, he lived well over 1,000 years ago.
But in this capacity, he's not expressing
Was this
personal
the
opinion.
Mishnah Torah?
This is the Mishnah Torah. He's expressing here what he believes is the codifying of the code of Jewish law. He's putting it together. He's writing it based on the Talmud. So the way he codifies this is the way we can know that's how he interprets the Talmud. So if the Talmud says this, and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Ben Azai, he said that ladies should study Torah. So now we have to see who do the Rambam choose.
So he says it could be dangerous. That's what he says. Right?
He uses a very vague term. And not a positive one. Whatever it is not positive.
I guess my question, my contrariness comes out when I see that these great, brilliant thinkers were expressing themselves the best that they could, but 1,000 years ago, in a world that has so different
Completely honest.
from where we live.
Right. So,
So my
here I'm not
question is,
trying to
would they
understand the society.
interpret the Torah
The same way
The
they live
same
today.
way, if we had no more books with some, we started off all over again. Let's reinterpret
That I
today.
can't know unless I look at the sages today who chose to interpret it again, reinterpret it, and that's going to be on page 3. So let me
Okay,
just finish
all right.
page 2 with the Rambam,
Okay,
and we'll
all
get
right,
there.
okay, fine.
The Rambam says, "Isha shlamda Torah." If a woman does study Torah, yesh la sachar. She has reward. Reward. She's rewarded for it.
Not war.
But aval en eno kischar ha'ish. But she doesn't receive the same reward as a man. But this is not because of men and women here. This is a rule all across the Torah. The Torah says, "מפני שלא נצטוות, וכל העושה דבר שאינו מצווה עליו לעשותו, אין שכרו כשכר המצווה שעשה, אלא פחות ממנו." Says the Rambam, this is a rule all over the place. If your kid says, "Hey, I want to clean my room," wakes up one morning and something had gotten into his head, wants to clean his room. Would you commend him for cleaning his room?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How hard is it for him to clean his room? He decided he wants to do it. He's going to go ahead with it.
It's very easy.
It's very easy. He chose to do this.
That's right.
What if that same kid, you tell him, "Go get up right now, go clean your room, and you have an hour to clean it"? How much resistance comes from that kid? From here, the rabbis have a rule that one who's commanded to do something has an innate yetzer hara not to do it. Whereas you'll find today, women signing up by the truckloads to study Torah, you'll find an equal, if not greater amount of men who are sick and tired of studying Torah. There's a certain innate yetzer hara inside of a person to not do what they're supposed to do. To not do what they're supposed to do. And this, our rabbis say, therefore develops a rule. 2 people can do the same action. If one is commanded to do it, and they still resist their urge of not doing it, they go ahead and they clean their room, even though their mom told them to do it. It wasn't a choice, they had to do it. That's a higher reward than the one who chose to do it, because the one who chose to do it clearly is not fighting the yetzer hara anymore. They intellectually understood that this is something they want to do. And you might think in a different world that that's a higher level, but when you understand in the context of go clean your room, there's a certain urge. You want to fight. Who are you to tell me I should clean my room? But the Rambam continues. It sounds so very interesting. He reinterprets the Mishnah as follows. He says, and even though she has reward, Tzivu Chachamim, our sages commanded us, Shelo yilamed adam et bito Torah, that a person should not teach his daughter Torah. Mipnei sherov hanashim, because the majority of women. Who's getting ready for this one?
Should.
You said it yourself before the Rambam said. En da'atam mechuvenet lehitlamed. They don't have the patience, the care, the interest to sit down and learn things from the origin till the end.
Is that what he's saying?
That's what the Rambam said.
Over 1,000 years ago, he said it.
Hold on.
I mean, put it in
1,000 years ago, was the Rambam right? I don't know, I wasn't there 1,000 years ago. I asked you a question at the beginning of this class. If I were to give a 3-day Talmud series by the greatest minds in the Jewish world today, how many women would come? The Rambam, everyone else around the table said nobody.
Wait, Ariella, let me tell you. Marlene and I talked about this last night. I used to teach girls back east who were completely secular. They called them boats. They were kids who were Syrian, but they themselves were immigrants where when I would close my eyes, they spoke a fluent Arabic. You felt like you were in Syria. And I was teaching them American history, not a Jewish subject. And the hardest thing was to get them engaged because they told me that in their culture, the only thing they need to do is be pretty. And if they're pretty, they will get good husbands who will take care of them. And this is majority. We're not talking about a minority. Majority of the girls said we don't care to be smart. We want to get our nails done. We want to go get our hair done, and we want to look pretty because we don't care.
And you
Now,
know what?
there's
I
a
agree with you. When you raise a kid, okay, that the most important thing is to be pretty, okay, so they can get married, and the husband will take care of them, or whatever the story is. That's how they are being raised. But at the same time, too, you take that daughter and you teach her from the beginning that the most important thing to be, bless you, okay, is actually to use your brain, okay, and be
And given the
smart.
choice, you think she would come rather to college than go out to Macy's and shop? Even if she was educated.
But she was said
Even if she was educated.
I still think that.
Okay, so I don't.
What did you say about Macy's?
I still think
I'm saying
that-
even given the option, if we're talking about a home, their education is important. She has a day off. Would you prefer to go do math on the side, or would you prefer to go to Macy's shopping?
Macy's.
Do math.
Absolutely.
But you know,
Most
you said something
people
very
have to do
interesting.
that.
You said that even among
Right.
men who are obligated to learn, there's only a small group of men who really going to do it.
Very good.
So why should it be different? There's not going to be the majority of women who are going to be intellectual and putting all their eggs in that basket. There will be some, and why should if they want to, why should their way be blocked?
Can someone bring me a Shulchan Aruch, please, from that shelf? Someone.
You want tea?
Because I think in the general population,
Ariel,
there's,
it's the from the two middle bookcases. It's the right one.
Right here?
Okay, on the top, on the top, one shelf up. I'll tell you which volume. You're gonna see the first few volumes on the right is called Orach Chaim, not those. Adlora?
there are only a few Paulettes.
No,
Not everybody's a Paulette, right?
Exactly. I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Just-
the
it
first
wouldn't
few
be
volumes
if
are
you
called.
couldn't be
Can you help me with
because
Someone made a rule.
You're
That's right, I agree with you.
and Bet
and I think that is not even dependent. Obviously, it depends on the time because there's much
When
more
did women get the she's coming?
than a
When did women get the chance to vote? I mean, it was
But when I
socially
hear things today,
accepted. It was a social norm that women didn't
that
have
really.
the same position as men.
So there is that small group in Lakewood that's limiting. Right, but I think it's
Lori, it says on the spine which Simanim are. So just bring it to me.
High school because it's not good for them or whatever.
They're radicalized.
General statement.
Radicalized fanatics.
Nothing is conditioned.
Stupidity. They don't see what what are they doing to their followers? What are
Isn't
they
it kind of hard to separate what's innate from what's influenced so much by social mores?
Okay, let me read to you.
Sorry. I was
So
mentioning
don't forget,
something
male
to
chauvinism. Even in our world here,
Absolutely.
they've
When I
got
was
their
in
stuff.
middle
Don't ask for
college, and this is
directions, a variety of different things. So why not in our
school, okay?
Right.
Girls are learning, Beit Jacob, and I was subbing for the chemistry teacher. I worked in the administrative, but that day I was subbing for the chemistry teacher. The girl said, "Why do I need chemistry for if I'm going to finish here and get married?" So you have the opposite. The bring out is different than the Syrian that they didn't care for the education. Here they did care for the education. Nonetheless, she said, "I don't care to learn because I'm going to get married right after school."
mixed messages?
Okay, let me read to you, please, Shulchan Aruch, because you asked a good question that I don't think we addressed, and it's the reason I'm saying this is because my opinion is unpopular, though it's very well sourced. I want to read to you Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law says about men, not women, studying Torah. Chayav adam l'shalesh limudo. A person must split up the amount of time they study Torah into 3 parts. Shlish b'Torah, a third they must study Torah, the actual books of the Torah. Shlish b'Mishnah, a third, meaning the oral law, Torah Sheba'al Peh, says the Shulchan Aruch, the Talmud, Mishnah. And then it says Shulchan Aruch, and Shlish b'Talmud, and it says that means essentially what we would call today halakha. So 3 areas, Torah, Talmud, and halakha. The Torah being the source of all knowledge, all the rules come from the Torah, but also Torah being the connection to Hashem. In the Shulchan Aruch, you're not going to find God, you're going to find Judaism. In the Torah, you're going to find belief in Hashem. In the prophets, you're going to find belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to find the situations where we thought there was no hope and we were saved. A deep philosophical connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the origin of all the laws. In Halakha, you're going to find the conclusion of all the laws. And the middle step between the Torah and the Halakha, how you keep Shabbat, how you eat kosher, what's this, what's that, is the logic. How did we reach that conclusion between step A to step C? Okay? A man must separate his time into 3 parts. In order to have a balanced approach to Torah.
Is Adam mean all Adam? Or
Right now, we're assuming he's talking about men. Let's assume. I'm assuming he's talking about men for the sake of your point. And Tamar brought it up, so it's a good point.
I wish I was a kid again. The toys are so much fun.
He said, who is he talking about? What kind of person should separate their learning into three parts? He says the most simple Jew is one who works 3 hours a day and studies Torah 9 hours a day.
That's a simple Jew.
That's a simple Jew. Do you know which one I was talking about?
Wow.
Say the ratio again.
3 hours of working, osek b'umanuto, his trade, and 9 hours of studying Torah.
And when was this written?
Shulchan Aruch, after the Spanish expulsion. Yeah.
If you make it, if you can
1500s.
survive on 3 hours.
Well, if you can't get any work, and this was written in Poland, the Shulchan Aruch.
No, it was
right?
written in
It was
Israel.
written- Oh, Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking of the guy that wrote the.
No, that's the
thing.
Rama.
Yeah.
Now
No,
here
no,
you
no.
find something very interesting. Shulchan Aruch is saying, so you have to separate your learning into three parts. Torah, Talmud, and Halakha. Now, just from what you know about the Jewish world today, most men that study Torah, what do they study most of their day of?
Talmud.
Talmud. How much Torah? How many prophets?
I know.
How much halakha, actual law from the books of law? So how much of the learning is practical? Meaning you have step one, Torah, which is practical on two levels. It teaches you both belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the source of everything. You have C, which is halakha, which is the ultimate conclusion. Meaning at the end of the day, you need to know how to make food in your kitchen, right? So how to light Hanukkah candles. That's step C. Step B, what is B? The Talmud. What is it for? What purpose does it serve?
Connection between the first and the
To understand, right? To understand the logic,
the cycle.
how it worked, how we reached this conclusion.
Right.
It doesn't. It's not practical. It's theoretical. All of it is theoretical. Sure, it teaches you how to think and whatever else. But if you only knew A and C, would you be living a flawed Jewish existence? No. Don't be afraid. No. If a person,
But you would miss
You
something.
wouldn't know.
you would
how
miss
they
out
relate
on
to-
something
Yes.
as an experience. But would you incorrectly follow halachot? Would you not believe in God? No. This area is purely theoretical. It's a theoretical study. And the fact the Jewish world chooses to spend the majority of its efforts studying B and not A and C is going to be where you find this is the divide. This is how you draw the line between different camps of Jews. Are you A and C Jews or are you B Jews?
It might be intellectually more stimulating.
It is intellectually more stimulating. Shulchan Aruch says in beautiful ways. What is this section B? דהיינו שיבין וישכיל אחי דבר מראשיתו ויוציא דבר מתוך דבר וידמה דבר לדבר. You learn how to compare one situation to another situation and to infer one thing from another thing. It's very exciting. It's very exciting.
If your mind works that way.
If your mind works that
If
way.
your mind works, period.
Now,
Like studying law or something.
Not everyone is oriented towards that, though.
Now the truth is that according to Shulchan Aruch, we're talking about a person who should study like this, A, B, and C. A person who has how many hours in his day to learn?
24.
3 hours of learning, 3 hours of working, and 9 hours of learning.
Very good. Your average, forget man, human being today, how many hours a day does he work?
8.
More.
More?
With this, 24/7.
How many hours a day does he study Torah?
Maybe 45.
I'm talking about a very religious person. Don't think about the...
I know of somebody very religious that they study. It takes them 2 hours to get to work, so they do it 2 hours to
On
get
the
to work
way,
and 2
and 2
hours.
hours.
Oh, so they have 4 hours.
So they've got
That's
4
And what do you think about them? They're like, that's very unusual. That's a very high level of learning Torah, right?
We've got a lot of kids at home also, so they're trying to
Learn on the road. 4 hours of learning Torah a day is more than most people have.
It's very difficult to do that on your own because you need someone as a backbone to be able to speak to so that you could do.
Okay, so it's a different kind of studying Torah. I agree with you. A different kind of studying Torah. It's not the same as sitting with a book with a partner and arguing, but you're at least learning something.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you though, that the Shulchan Aruch clearly, like Paulette tried to point out, and I'm going to rephrase what she says, not only does it not apply 1,000 years ago, you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody today who studies 9 hours a day.
Even a Kollel person?
Okay, I'm going to put Kollel people out of this category for a few reasons. One is that he doesn't work for 3 hours out of the day, so I don't know what Shulchan Aruch would say. I'm talking about a normal Jew. From here, by the way, you see that. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what you see from this. Everybody's working at least the bare minimum of what they need to support themselves.
There's a group of people
Okay,
only.
now let's say the Shach. You've heard the Shach from me before. The Siftei Kohen, this was the predominant Ashkenazi authority on the Shulchan Aruch. You have the Ramah who wrote notes on the Shulchan Aruch. But at the end of the day, when an Ashkenazi rabbi wants to codify Jewish law, he looks on the side of the page for the Shach. What does the Shach say?
On top of Ramah?
Sure. All of these commentaries you see on the page are all Ashkenazi. There's one Sephardic one on this page. Because whereas we Sephardim, what Rabbi Yosef Cairo said is law, it's not true by the Ashkenazim. They keep changing and adding and taking away, and the law didn't end by Rabbi Yosef Cairo. So there's a need to keep expressing. It's actually nice because you're not stuck in a box.
Is it
if
still
you're
being
Ashkenazi.
updated like that?
Sure. Now let me read to you what the Shach says. The Shach says, Katav HaDrisha. There was a rabbi called the Drisha. The Drisha is famous because he quotes his mother a few times in his commentaries, that she would teach halacha, different rules that he learned from his mother. Katav HaDrisha, Yesh Baalei Batim. There are Jews. Baalei Batim is the title, not for Torah scholars, but for your average Jew. A good Jew. Literally one who owns a home. The assumption is a Torah scholar cannot own his home.
Why?
What?
Because he doesn't have enough money to own his home. So nohagim lilmod b'chol yom Gemara, Perush, and Tosafot. They study every day Talmud, Rashi, and Tosafot. Perush is always Rashi. So they come home, they study what you call Daf Yomi. Now this is even a higher level of Daf Yomi. This is not like running through a page of Talmud. This is sitting down systematically and learning Talmud with the commentaries on it, Rashi and Tosafot, the two main commentaries. V'lo shal poskim. And they don't study the rest of the books of halakha, the actual practical books of Jewish law. I'm skipping a little bit. He says this Shulchan Aruch that we're talking about, that says you should separate your learning into A, B, and C, is talking to Mishi Yesh Lo Pnai Gadol, somebody who has a lot of free time. He should learn Shas. He should study Talmud. Aval Hinach, but today, Baalei Batim Sheinam Lomdim Rad Gimel Lo Ad Dalet Shaot. But today's very simple Jews that they only have 3 or 4 hours a day to study Torah. So your guy in the car, he fell into the category of very simple. He only has 3 or 4 hours a day to study Torah. He says, Lo yilmedu b'shas l'chud. They're not allowed to just study Talmud. Lo yilmedu b'shas l'chud. They're not allowed to just study Talmud.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. They should split the balance.
The commentaries on this Shach tell you that according to the Shach, someone who has only 3 or 4 hours a day to learn, and he comes to a class, and he studies Talmud for 3 or 4 hours, says the poskim who understand the Shach, they don't even receive reward for studying Torah.
Because they're not doing it.
There's nothing practical from their study. Great, you want to exercise your mind? You don't know anything about God. You don't know anything about the Torah. You don't know the source of anything, and you don't know practically what's happening. You asked me about kollel, guys. Walk into a kollel. Maybe not kollel, already people are advanced. Walk into yeshiva where people like me study from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. And ask them, hey, I want to ask you a question about the laws of washing your hands in the morning. If you want to, I'll give you a few questions to ask them. They won't know what you're talking about. They don't study the laws of waking up in the morning. The entire day is immersed in beef.
That's right.
And the Chazon Ish was a great Ashkenazi rabbi. One of his writings are like, in our hearts, they incredible. The Chazon Ish, he writes, he's a rabbi in Bnei Brak. He says, how long are we going to teach people to keep sharpening their minds, and sharpening their minds, and sharpening their minds, and then never use them?
But would they then be able to know where to find the answer to that question?
No. They're only taught Talmud. And like you know...
Why? So many hours a day just Talmud? Why?
Sure.
But the thing is, the assumption is that they have they're already, grew up in this whole thing. They know they
must know the Torah already, and they already know the halachot. We're giving a very heavy emphasis on a section of Judaism that our rabbis deemed only important if you have enough time to study it. From here, by the way, my rabbis understand that the entire opposition of our rabbis for ladies studying the oral law is not because they're not allowed to, but because just like a man who doesn't have enough time in his day to study all these intricacies back and forth of oral law, how much more so a woman who the assumption is she doesn't have that much time? She should spend her time studying other things that are more relevant, that are more practical, that are more important. You're going to see the Rambam says...
Like what?
You're going to see right now what the Rambam says. The Rambam says, our rabbis were talking, we're talking about the oral law, the Talmud. אבל תורה שבכתב לא ילמד אותה לכתחילה, ואם למדה אינה כמלמדת תפלות. The Rambam says the written law I wouldn't teach her, but if she does study it, it's not anything bad. Okay, I don't want to elaborate more here. The Rambam's next piece about the study of esoteric Jewish wisdom. He calls it the Pardes, the study of Kabbalah and all kinds of things. The Rambam says that a man or a woman who study this and reach the high levels, they could reach the highest places in the world. So clearly the Rambam is not limiting advanced Torah study for women, rather he's having a hard time with people who are studying things that are not useful. I'm skipping through some of these sources.
So the Rambam is saying that if people have time to study, they should study all three. But if they don't have that much time, they should study the practical part, no?
That's what all these rabbis seem to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And the assumption is that a woman, by the essence of a woman, is that she doesn't have enough time.
Okay, but she does.
It might not be true today, but you're talking about it. I mean, he's not. My rabbis will argue he's not necessarily talking about the intellectual capability of a woman as much as practically. If I would tell you, I only have an hour a night to study Torah, what should I be studying?
So
Nobody.
For a woman, wouldn't it be halacha? Because this is actually hard to handle.
Very good.
Jewish law.
So my wife didn't go to school in Lakewood, but if you ask my wife what they studied all day long, it's probably Tanakh and Halakha. Halachot very well, very well. A and C. I mean, this formula makes sense, and that's why in my synagogue I don't give a Talmud class. People give it. Oh, what are you? You're not good enough to teach Talmud. My father gives a Talmud class because people want to study Talmud. I view for a person who has an hour a week to study Torah is an forgive. I'm on record. I know I'm being recorded. I know that people don't agree with me. It's not what the Jewish street says. But based on the sources I'm presenting to you right now, for a man, it's a waste of time to study Talmud. Unless you tell me that he has hours in his day. When you're studying to be a rabbi in yeshiva and you're learning your whole life, you can't skip section B. You can't be a scholar of Judaism and skip half of it. But when you're a person who needs, you're a layman, you're a lay woman. Your job is to be a good person and a good Jew. B is not going to do anything for you. Maybe on an intellectual level, so you can go every once in a while to a seminar. But even for a man, this is not something that should be studied.
Surprised, I mean, we had the beginning saying that women cannot think as well as supposedly men, and yet if that is true that they only study the Talmud, one would think that they know how to think, and they would want to know where all this came from. So to search for the source rather
look what you just brought.
With what they're learning.
You just quoted the Prisha on the bottom of page 2. The Prisha is the same rabbi, the Jerisha who was quoted here. He wrote 2 books, the Jerisha and the Prisha. Okay, it's a nice rhyme. He says, but if you find a lady who she went and studied on her own, Talmud is talking about. Anu ro'ot sheyatzu meharov. That is proof in and of itself that she is not part of this majority of women that the Rambam mentions. Meaning she is a testimony to herself. She's an exception to the rule. And that's why the Shulchan Aruch says that she has reward. A woman can take herself out of the category of a majority and become an exception. This is the normal. It says it's okay.
I want to just throw something in to think about, because it's easy to forget this. What would life have been like if we were women back then? Let's give it the 1500s, even in Israel and whatnot. Where would we wake up in the morning? We have our kids. Where does the water come from? We're not rich. Where does the water come from?
You're going to the well to bring your water.
Okay,
you're going to a market to buy flour.
Right? And then you're going to the market to buy some fresh food because you don't have refrigeration. You come home and you prepare it, and you've got your kids to watch out for, and then you got to feed them a second or a third or fourth time during the day, okay? And then the evening comes, you probably only have candles, there's no electricity, and you might even be limited on candles, you know? Or oil, but you might be limited on that.
You have to be very wealthy to have light
at night. Money. So when dark comes, you know, you're going to bed 7 o'clock at night, and then you start all over again the next day. I'd like to know when in the middle of that day does the majority of women have time to pick up her husband's book and read, even assuming she even knew how to read.
learning to read.
And if she didn't know how to read and wanted to learn how to read, who would take care of her children while she came to Rabbi Yoni's table to take a class to learn how to
Wait,
read?
Paulette just brought something up that she doesn't know she brought up. Remember the lady that asked Rabbi Eliezer a question about the Torah? He said, I won't answer you, I'd rather burn the Torah than answer you.
Right.
We said, what kind of woman was she? That she had the luxury of studying Torah. What kind of woman was she?
A rich woman.
She was a matrona. She was a rich woman. She, meaning she must have been the kind of lady who had other people doing all these things for her. And there, she wasn't and you'll always find this in the Jewish community, by the way, that the daughters of wealthy people were very well educated because they didn't do the things that everyone else was doing. They had servants and maids, and so their father would get a tutor to teach them how to read or how to draw or how to play music. Or, you're talking about non-Jewish world, it was the same thing. And so you're right. When would a person have such time? Says the Prisha, but if you find a woman who is the exception, she's allowed to. None of these teachings apply to her. Where are we going with this? Tell me where I'm going to take this teaching.
That it's okay to be a woman rabbi if you...
No. Today we're not the woman rabbis.
Somehow with the groups in Israel that are saying women can't study.
If today a lady is studying Torah, what does that mean about her?
She's a bright, intelligent woman.
And she says no, and she's able to do it. But this is not a question about whether it's permitted or prohibited, but whether this is practical to. Is she the kind of person who is cut out for this kind of study? And if you see that she is studying it, then she must be the kind of person who's cut out for the study. The Prisha would suggest the following: if you had a school for girls, yeah. The boys, they must. They don't have a choice. Now, you could say that they don't. To study Torah, they have to. The woman also, A and C. The question is, what about section B? Can you force all the girls in the school to take a Talmud class?
No.
Not according to our sources. Because it could be at best a waste of time for them. Now, you might think about the school system that you're familiar with today. Half the classes they take might be a waste of time for them. I'm not talking about that school system. But if I were to be educating people purely according to the Torah, I would probably have to separate the men into two groups. Those who wish to go down the road of Torah scholarship, and those who wish to go down the road of being a good, normal Jew. And in the ladies' department, I probably would have to... A woman doesn't know if she's going to go down the road of being a Torah scholar's wife or something to that effect. But do you feel that you're cut out for studying these things? And if she says yes, then... Can she study those things?
Yes.
And if not,
No problem.
then she shouldn't feel guilty about it. It's a choice that she made, which is why many schools today will offer Talmud for girls as an elective. In a class where you could choose a number of things to take, girls do study Talmud, but out of choice. You can't force this down someone's throat. No, we're not that far yet. The Shulchan Aruch has a very radical teaching. The Shulchan Aruch says that in the morning when you make a blessing on the Torah, every person when they wake up they should say the blessings of the Torah. If someone would call me up at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, Rabbi, I have an urgent halachic question, I wouldn't be allowed to answer their question until I say the blessing on the Torah first. You're not allowed to study Torah until you make the blessings, right? You're allowed to actually make blessings without washing your hands, and you can study Torah without washing your hands. Because the Kabbalists are those who prohibited us from studying Torah without washing our hands. But the halachists allow it. So you are living in a world that's dominated by Kabbalists. I'm talking about a world dominated by halachists. To ask a halachic question, you have to make the blessing. Which is why immediately after you make this blessing, you must study a little bit of Torah. Is a woman allowed to make this blessing on the Torah?
Study, you do say it in the morning.
Maybe she's not obligated in studying Torah.
But you say it anyway in the morning, all the time.
So if we call Vori, and ask her a halakhic question, and we wake her up at 4:30 in the morning because it's really important to us. Does she have to? And she takes the call, and she wants to answer us. Does she have to say the bracha?
Right. Shulchan Aruch says, "Nashim mevarchot birkot haTorah." Shulchan Aruch says, "Woman must make the blessing on the Torah." Okay. Why? Says the Chavetz Chaim, "Hatam deha chayavot lilmod hadinim shelahen." Says, of course a woman must, because she must know Torah that's relevant to her. So, and he'll go through the math here. He'll say, let's go through all the things of Torah. All of the Torah a woman must know? Yes. The prophets a woman must know? Yes. The writings a woman must know? Yes. The laws that apply to a Jewish woman? Think about today. Shabbat? Yes. Kosher?
Yeah.
Yes. Mezuzot? Yes, she has a house of mezuzot. Then tell me what else. So what does she not have to know? Tefillin
Talmud.
and
She'll have to
Talit,
know
that's
Talmud.
it. And Talmud, says the Chavetz Chaim, the vast majority of Torah she's obligated to know. And of course she makes a blessing of Torah in the morning. Now the fact that Shulchan Aruch codifies this into law already tells us what the Shulchan Aruch thinks about women studying Torah. He can't tell you to make a blessing on the study of something you're not allowed to study. He's simply limiting what you study to what is relevant to you, and he would do the same thing for a man. Does someone here have a good English and can also read Hebrew?
Say that again.
The Chavetz Chaim. We're now at the impact of modernity.
Where is this?
The Chavetz Chaim lived he passed away in the 1930s.
Who's did all of this?
No, we
Page 3. Now we're
said
on
it out
page
loud.
3.
We're on page 3.
Europe, right?
Yes, he lived in Europe. The impact of modernity. There was a Rabbi Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. You might have heard of him. He was the rabbi of German Orthodoxy. Rabbi Hirsch. He's considered a very modern liberal thinker.
Yes,
This piece doesn't reflect all of that, but some of that.
he was the one who started the reform movement.
No, he started what some would call the early, they call it neo-orthodoxy.
Yes.
It's not really accurate, but he started the first movement of orthodoxy that
Modern
had secular
Orthodoxy.
studies and spoke
Modern
German and
Orthodoxy,
all kinds of things. It wouldn't be modern orthodoxy that happened much later, but this is in the 1800s. Maybe I'll read. It has both Hebrew and English. He says, limud, learning, is a more comprehensive term than shinun. Shinun is a deeper kind of learning, which we took to be the teaching of the Torah in short, concise sentences. That is why, so we believe, the Gemara attaches it saying, B'nechem v'lo b'notechem, that your sons should study and not your daughters. Whereby the duty of teaching Torah would be restricted to sons and exclude daughters, to limatem otam et b'nechem and not to v'shinantam d'vanecha. I'll explain in a second.
But you did.
As a matter of fact, women are only not to be directed to the scientific study of the law, the acquirement of which and the duty of handling it down belong essentially to the calling of every Jewish man. But the understanding of the Jewish scripture and the knowledge of the Torah that are essential for fearing Hashem, there's a verse, fearing Hashem, that belong to a true fear of God, that leads to a conscientious fulfilling the duties of a Jewish life, belong to the education of the intellect and feelings of our daughters as much as of our sons. That is already indicated in the Torah by the command of Hakel. Remember, you must bring everyone. That's what the pasuk you mentioned last week. That men and women and children, everyone must be there to study. This is the part of Torah which is a scientific study of the law. That's what we call section B. That is the territory of men who are dealing with the scientific study of the law. But the entire Jewish population must have section A and C, which bring a person to a connection to Hashem and a conscientious fulfillment of the law. That is he says, inheritance just as much of the daughters as it is of the sons. And if it does say in Chagigah, with reference to the sentence of Hakel, command that the men come to study and the women only come to hear, still it has already said just there that Leman Yishmahu does not just mean hearing, but proper, competent understanding to be taken as learning. Rav Hirsch here is pretty conservative in his stand about what men and women should study, but is much more open than, let's say, Rabbi Eliezer in the Talmud or the Tosfot that we mentioned. He says that the majority of the Torah is the equal inheritance of men and women. So then any teaching that you'll find in the Talmud that is contrary to that can easily be explained away, is what he did a few times in this paragraph. You can maybe say Rav Hirsch is being an apologetic. You could. Or Rav Hirsch is simply taking a different spin on things. But Rav Hirsch is going to be the first step in especially European Jewry, this is the 1800s, to opening up the doors of greater Torah study to women. And Rav Hirsch followed through with this. Him and Rabbi Hildesheimer had a seminary for Jewish women in Germany, where women studied Torah and they knew how to read, and they all kinds of things that were unheard of in Eastern Europe for sure. The Ben Ish Chai I read with you last week.
Yeah.
There was a rabbi called the Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg. I mentioned him to you before. I have a set of his books, about 25 books of his that he wrote on halakha. Rabbi Waldenberg was the chief rabbi of the Shaar Hospital in Jerusalem, which made him the world's expert on science, medicine, and Torah. So many of the medical issues that we deal with are between Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and him. Those are the two big sources. Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg had to deal with all kinds of stories and situations, things that other rabbis never heard of before. perhaps the first rabbi to ever deal with a man switching over to become a woman, or the other way around. And where does that apply halachically? Does a man now become obligated in the laws of a woman, or vice versa? He was one of the first rabbis to ever deal with such a question.
They dealt with it?
Of course. Rabbi Waldenberg passed away about 8 years ago. I don't know, not so long ago, very recently.
He dealt with the fact that people who needed new valves in their hearts, and at the time, they only had pig valves that they were dealing with, or a stainless steel valve. And I know this for a fact because my mother had to have this operation. And I remember that we had to report to Rabbi Abrams, who had to report somewhere else to find out if we could use it. And the answer came back that she had to have the steel valve. We couldn't use it.
Interesting. So I don't know what Rabbi Waldenberg's take on that. Rabbi Waldenberg dealt with issues such as abortions. What happens if a person knows that a child is going to be very sick when they are born, and they're going to pass away in the first few months of their life, or things like that? Does that warrant an abortion? Such questions that Rav Waldenberg dealt with. Rav Waldenberg went through a whole, and the reason why I love Rabbi Waldenberg, as much as he was an Ashkenazi rabbi, his books are full of, as Ashkenazi rabbi, I'm telling you why. His books are full of quotes from the Ben Ish Chai, from Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, from Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He was considered, Rabbi Ovadia considered him equally proficient in Sephardic sources as he was, which is a big deal. He's the first rabbi, just like I would argue that perhaps Rav Ovadia was the first Sephardic rabbi who knew the entirety of Ashkenazi Jewish literature. Rav Waldenberg was the Ashkenazi equivalent, the first Ashkenazi rabbi who knew the entirety of Sephardic Jewish literature in the other way. Rav Waldenberg was the Rosh Yeshiva of Rabbi Uziel's yeshiva. So how this all links back together in a big circle, we're talking about a very specific camp of rabbis. Rabbi Waldenberg has a whole letter on the study of Torah for women in the year today. And he says, Mikol Hamur, from everything that I've already told you, it's very clear that the law is today, that women study both the written law, women study the oral law, and they make a blessing on both of them. That was Rav Waldenberg's conclusion. Okay? I'm flipping over to page 4. On purpose. I want to get to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That was what I was waiting for.
I like Soloveitchik.
He's the end.
Yeah, but I like him.
He's good. She was reading ahead. You see that?
She read ahead.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe writes, "Umizeh muvan." From here, he gave a whole speech. This was at Fabrengen. There's a book of Fabrengens. They wrote down every word the Rebbe said. It's not the same thing as Sichot. It's not the Ma'amarim. It's kind of like an open mic, and they recorded everything that was said there. And the Rebbe, in many places in his actual letters and writings, said the same thing. So this is not something that was meant to be off record. The Lubavitcher Rebbe stood by this opinion throughout his entire life. And I think that if you know anyone who goes to a woman who go to Chabad school for ladies, they'll reiterate that this is probably the style that the Lubavitcher Rebbe passed on to his schools. He said, from here I can explain to you that aside from the laws that women must study, about the oral law, regarding the oral law, because in any case, he says that the ladies are already studying all kinds of studies, philosophy, science, their secular education is at a very high level. He says that if you're going to consider something is going to lead them off the Jewish path, it's not going to be the study of Talmud as much as sitting in a college professor's class who's anti-Judaism or whatever he's doing. So not only am I saying that she's allowed to study the oral law, this is more than that. Additionally to that, I will tell you, said I will say that a woman is obligated. She must be taught the oral law. So I'm not saying, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that she's allowed to. But because of the situation in which we live in today, it's not the same as 1,000 years ago. Not only can a woman study B, section B, she must. She must.
I don't think it's taught though, like in basic.
I don't know, but I found in my experience less of an opposition to this in Chabad circles than in other circles. Meaning when I brought up this idea, it's not so
I thought the women in Chabad that I've seen mostly just study the Tanya.
Till they get to that stage, and there's a lot of learning they do in elementary school, high school, and all kinds of things like that. But it could be, I don't know where you're floating around, but in my experience.
No,
Torah lo rak limud halachot psukot bli tamen. He said, I don't believe that women should just study. I don't believe that women should just study the laws, do this, don't do that. Halachot psukot. He said, without any reason or logic. V'ad the shakal, it says, I think they should learn elegam limud tameh halachot. They must study the reasons for every halacha. V'ad the shakal v'taria shabatorah shemiteva ha'adam. Says even the back and forth arguments that happen over every halacha, I believe they must study as well, says the Lubavitch Rebbe. Shemiteva ha'adam, because it's in the nature of a human being, and he puts in parentheses, ish o isha, man or woman, it's in their nature. Shechafetz v'ta'aneg yoter b'limud zeh, that they will enjoy much more this style of learning, of knowing everything, the back and forth, where everything comes from. Shalidei zeh tiyeh Etzran, it's probably misspelled, התפתחות החושים והכישרונות ברוח תורתנו הקדושה. He said, because if they're going to develop, so imagine a girl goes to law school. She came from a very religious home. And she studies debate and arguments and ripping apart witnesses and all kinds of things. That you're allowing her, the first time she's ever dealt with logic, with debate, with intellectuality, is coming from a non-clean source. She's studying it in some law school somewhere. Why wouldn't you first teach her that we have the same exact tradition, but from a holy source? How to drill witnesses, how to find out if someone's telling the truth, is that really a source, or are you just mistranslating it for me? Why don't we teach women the same thing? Says Lubavitch Rebbe, if you ask me, my belief is it's not only allowed for them to study, but it is an obligation for them to study such. And remember what I told you once about the Lubavitch Rebbe? People didn't appreciate when I said it then, but I'm saying it again. The Lubavitch Rebbe didn't have a lot of friends in the Jewish world for the simple reason that he was a radical thinker. The Lubavitch Rebbe was always head and shoulders above what everybody else was saying. He was pretty much a generation ahead of himself. And what the world needed today is perhaps a Lubavitch Rebbe. When the world had a Lubavitch Rebbe, the world wasn't yet ready for it. They still had people that their daughters weren't even studying to read, let alone to learn oral law and those kind of things. But it's these teachings that you appreciate a generation afterwards and say, whoa, if we only would have listened, you wouldn't even had this discussion today. You wouldn't have had this discussion. And I say this in a positive light. A radical thinker for me is a compliment, not a denigration. Yeah. And for other people, no, we don't want him to be too radical. Okay, that's not my problem. But as a rabbi of the Jewish people, when I look at the Lubavitch Rebbe, I get very proud. This is a person who one thing I say about the Lubavitch Rebbe, one thing I struggle a lot with the Lubavitch Rebbe, is he was not very open-minded. I'll explain to you what I mean. The Lubavitch Rebbe was very conservative. When it came to Jewish law, he did not bend the rules. He would not accept leniencies. He was very passionately stringent on things. The Lubavitch Rebbe was a Hasidic Rebbe. So, for example, he would allow his Hasidim to do an early Passover Seder for the people in the community, and he would demand, there are letters of Lubavitch Rebbe, at 11:30 at night, when all the guests leave, you go wake up your children and start all over again. So they do a Pesach Seder at the same time. Oh, but they're little kids and they should sleep in bed. The Lubavitch Rebbe said, how do I expect you to be Jewish in Timbuktu if your kids are going to do Pesach Seders at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? He was a very rigid Jewish thinker, very loyal to the text. When the Lubavitch Rebbe saw that the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, or the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar, say that evolution might be possible according to Jewish theology, that really the world is much older than 5,776 years old. That was their opinion. The Lubavitch Rebbe has a letter in which he calls them apologetics. And he says it's invalid to use their information today because we believe the world is 5,776 years old. And it's coming from a rabbi who was a scientist. The Lubavitch Rebbe was not illiterate in science and math in the world, but he was very rigid when it came to Jewish sources. And if a person who's that loyal to traditional texts comes up and says it's an obligation for a woman to study something, I take his words very seriously. Because the Lubavitch Rebbe, with all due respect, was not the kind of guy out of his open-minded, liberal progression to allow such a thing if he didn't feel that the Rambam or the Shulchan Aruch or the Talmud would have actually allowed it in its stead. And so his words carry a lot of weight. But we're not done. Next week, God willing, we'll go through the writings of Rabbi Chaim David Halevi, the writings of Rabbi Yehuda Henkin. Rabbi Yehuda Henkin is the father. Remember the rabbi who was killed about a month and a half ago? The Rabbi Henkin and his wife on Sukkot, they were killed in front of their kids. This is his father. We're going to go through one of his letters. And Rabbi Soloveitchik. And with that, we'll end the conversation of whether or not women can study Torah. But if you're happier this week than you were last week, then I'm also happy as well.